Okay, hey, this is Todd Smith with 360 Converge, doing our little perspectives thing, and I have Ben Hadley with me today. Welcome, Ben. I'm glad I finally got to catch up with you. I always love talking with you. I always seem to walk away with a little extra knowledge that I always appreciate. So, with that being said, for some of the people who maybe watch this, don't know your whole background, you want to spend a minute and kind of sum up, your automotive life. So.
Yeah, sure. I'll do it in 280 characters or less. Started at dealer.com, left there after 7 years, went to a company called Clairvoy doing multi-touch attribution models for 2 years, and then most recently found myself at a company called Prodigy doing digital retail, really from the reverse, really focused on in-store, also doing online. And then it kind of led me to this world where I realized, wow, there isn't a lot of dealers approaching digital retail with the right mindset. They're really thinking of it as a marketing product instead of an operations product. And so I decided to venture out on my own. And now I'm consulting with digital retailing companies, helping them make sure that expectation is changed as early as possible in the dealer's mind.
Right. Okay. So look, I think you have like a really great breadth of experience, right? From dealer with all web, digital marketing, all that dealer was really good at and like pioneered a lot of stuff. I think Rick Gibbs and that whole team did a great job, Mark and them. And, Steve at Clairvoy, I think he really tried to push into measuring and managing your ad spend with attribution modeling and stuff. I think he's done some interesting stuff there. And I think with Prodigy, I think it's very interesting. Your experience lies that, hey, it's not necessarily just the technology, it's the processes you have in the dealership and execution that are going to be really impactful for creating less friction. So I think, let me dive in. I have a couple of questions, if that's cool with you. So digital retailing is the new Cinderella, obviously, savior of the auto industry, which I don't believe in that, just to be clear.
Totally.
But I think it's an integral piece potentially now moving forward with people and all that. So you've installed lots of stores with this type of stuff. Like, what are the top, let's say, 2-3 things that dealers that are usually in their blind spots when they put a program like this in and they just don't recognize?
Yeah. So I think the first is that transition from marketing to sales operations. So, I always say, look, digital retail is closer to PayPal than it is to, I'll use like an auto example, like Auto Trader, right? Auto Trader is pure marketing. But PayPal, if you went to another, like a traditional Shopify e-commerce website, and you said, let's look at your CRM, let's look at HubSpot, let's look at Salesforce, you wouldn't see PayPal as a source, right? Nobody would go, oh, PayPal sold me so many widgets. Good job, PayPal. They'd go, PayPal made it really easy for my customers to transact with me.
Yeah. PayPal
really helped them speed up the transaction or created efficiency some way. But they would never say, good job, PayPal, for selling me so many whatevers.
Yeah.
And the problem is that like anything that has had a digital or even the word digital in the name has almost by default been sent to an internet manager. And a lot of times, internet managers are looking at the world from a compensation lens of leads.
Yeah.
And so they filter these products in and they think, cool, lead volume though. That's what I care about. Lead volume is essentially the atomic metric unit of marketing. Right. And so as I think about it, I'm like, well, if we're moving from marketing to operations and we're moving from the optimization of selling to the optimization of buying, or the movement of the optimization of shopping to the optimization of commitment, then are we measuring it correctly? Because lead doesn't really speak to buying. Lead doesn't really speak to commitment. Lead speaks to just getting them in the door, right? So I think the first thing a dealer needs to work on is changing those kind of metric units that they're using to measure the value of the product.
Okay, that's insightful. So, and I love that. So what would be the second one you would think that stands out to you?
So the next thing is reduce, like I would say, going wide instead of going deep. So especially in today, I think if anything we've learned from 2008 to 12, where I'll say like the internet department was kind of taken in and adopted nationwide.
Yes.
I think the lesson there was we thought, hey, why don't, like, I think the thought was actually, we don't know what to do with these weird auto buy telefaxes. So like, give it to Gary because Gary has an iPhone or a, BlackBerry at the time.
Yeah.
I think that was the actual thought. But like, I'll give it a little bit more credibility than that. I'll say there was a deliberate, concerted effort to think through and say, well, these things are strange. Let's get some really high touch experts to deal with them.
Right. Okay.
And lo and behold, like 20 years later, whatever it is, 12 years later, we still have them. And we know 99% of your customers come from an internet source of some sort.
Right.
Or use the internet. So it's almost like, why do we have this SWAT team of people when when it's still, and I think the same trap exists with digital retailing. I hear a lot of people going out and saying, just start it with 1 or 2 people. They'll be your SWAT team. And I think the worry is that in like 10 years, you're going to have 1 or 2 guys that do a digital retail thing. And it's like, yeah, but a lot of people are using it now. It's over the 50% threshold.
Right.
Like, why are we treating it? It doesn't make sense. Everybody should have some baseline knowledge.
Yeah.
In the shopping or selling experience this way.
That's an interesting. I mean, I believe you're absolutely correct in that. I was even starting to question, like, why do we have internet departments if everyone's an internet shopper? I understand it back in 95, 6, 7. Yeah, it was a very small unit of customers that even had computers, right? Until
Totally.
Dell Gateway started to ship, and like Walmart had I wrote an article about this. I remember in the like 90s, I said the second that Walmart shipped the sub $500 PC for Christmas time was the time when the internet was going to be an impactful piece of just our everyday, habits, right? And then obviously the internet and everything.
I think I got an e-machine from them before they were bought by HP, and that was like the sub 500.
Yeah.
Like,
I said, it has to happen in that to make it like what everyone uses. And I think the iPhone and Android just accelerated all that, like
totally
100x, right? So
yeah.
So interesting enough. So philosophy wise, it's really driven by store process, and I think changing how we do certain things, and is that behaviorally driven? Like, hey, this is my swim lane. It's been my swim lane for a long time, and I don't want to change my swim lane, so I just want to add this extra piece to it. Is that a core problem, do you think, versus stepping back and being more of a change agent and then restructuring your organization? Because let's be honest, if any time is the perfect time to restructure your dealership organizationally, it's right now. We have a global or national pause button that got hit. So it's like, I feel it's like that movie where, like, they hit the pause button, but the one guy can still walk around and see everything and go,
totally.
I see different.
Just rearrange these things.
Yeah, I'm going to move this guy over here. And then all of a sudden they turn it back on and all the action happens, right?
Yeah, so, I think, it's almost pure necessity at this point. I mean, I wouldn't say digital retailing is.
No, I don't think.
But I would say
it's retailing. How we're going to
obviously, restructuring how you do your business is completely changed. And in like, I guess one of the things that worries me is that another, I guess I'll add another to my list of 2 there. A third would be that there's there's probably a lot of dealers that are adopting digital retail right now as an emotional response to what's happened.
Right. That's true. Not a
Right.
business thought. It's like, I got to stay in business somehow. So give me whatever I need.
So just throw this at the wall and see if it sticks.
Let me take my magic pill, blue pill. I'm ready. I'm a digital
Exactly.
retail guy now. So.
Yeah. It almost, I think, would be more productive while you're looking through the ecosystem of digital retail providers to figure out what's the best fit for you. In order to figure out the best fit, again, if we're changing our value or the way we measure the value, then it almost becomes more important, in my opinion, to create a process by which you can sell a car, deliver a car, do an at-home test drive, regardless of any of the software.
Yes.
And then as soon as you start evaluating the software, you're actually going to start going, well, this one actually helps us with the pre-existing step of moving from A to B. You know, like this one helps me do a walk around. Right. This one helps me do video conferencing. This one helps me do communication. This one helps me do, because I think really what you're going to find is you're not so much reinventing the wheel. You're just moving the wheel, right? We're just taking a lot of the same steps that we normally do and then trying to digitize them in some different way.
Yeah, I look at that as I always feel you should lay out your processes first and then decide what technology you can do to remove friction along the process. Don't rely on the technology and then try to craft your business around it. And my experience with that was really around CRM when we had the first CRM that I did. And I would go into dealerships and they would always say, and I'm sure you experienced this at dealer and everywhere you went, where you walk in and you sell the product and then they go, okay, who is your best user? What do they do? I want to do that here. And and I would always go, look, that is years in the making to get to that process. You can't just jump into someone else's process and fill their shoes and fill their pants well. So you need to map your own process and then a guiding path if you want to get there through time, because your people will just rebel. I
got into a 2-hour debate about this yesterday.
Oh, good. This is fun.
Yeah, it was my hypothesis was like, you know, there is obviously a lot of friction between OEMs and dealers. Fair enough, right? And on one hand of the equation, you're like, hey, you're kind of able to buy this business model out of a box, right? Like you go to a franchise and you say, hey, I want to open X brand. And they go, okay.
Yeah.
And then they kind of give you this blueprint and they're like, here you go. And then like the friction really happens when you start disagreeing with the blueprint, right?
Yes. Yeah. I want to spend $3 million on a remodel and buy your overpriced tile. No,
your blue arch, like, come on.
No. Hey man, I really need the new bow tie for $190,000. No, probably not.
Yeah, it's crazy. But there is an interesting, I think, dynamic that emerges when you're buying a blueprint versus developing a blueprint, right?
Yeah.
So like on a pure development standpoint, it's interesting to me only because when you look at classic startups, both of which we've been a part of, right?
Yeah.
They're actually probably your best guiding indicators and your best mentors in this time. Because as you're kind of like saying, I'm going to restructure everything, you certainly can't call up the OEM and say, hey, help me with this thing. They're like, we don't know either. Like, this is new territory for us. The interesting thing though is like, ask any startup in any space, but it's particularly in auto, and you say, hey, do you guys do remote selling? They go, yeah, most of our team sits in an office, does webinars like this.
Yep.
You've been on them before, right?
Yeah.
What about remote contracting? Do you guys solve? Yeah, we use HelloSign, we use DocuSign, whatever. Like literally that process has been what we have gone through for the last.
You do it from my phone. Yeah.
Exactly. So you have these experts actually that already know that blueprint pretty well and that have created that blueprint.
Yeah.
And, I think that would be where I would guide dealers to find a resource, is maybe contact some of those people that you're like, damn, that was a really easy buying process to get that CRM, to get that chat product, to get that whatever, because they're probably going to be really helpful for your customer to have a really easy buying process.
Yeah,
Not from their product, but from mapping out that same exact process structure.
It's experience, right? Products can be plugged into any of this, right? It's really the experience management and how that's going to operate. So, yeah, that's really interesting. Did you ever hear the two horses ass story? That it goes back to the first part of your answer of the previous question, was like, why do we have just this internet, which is like a bolt-on of the existing sales team, and then is digital retailing going to be a bolt-on of a bolt-on, and we have this thing. So two horses asses, right? So back in the day when we had this is a crazy story. The guy who I was like, I know, you'll bear with me. So two horses.
I'm in, man. I'm in.
Okay. So back in the day, they would take a carriage, right? Horse-drawn carriage. And they would put two horses next to each other. And that was the width of as big as they could make the wagon, right? So wagon wheels were X width. If you line up the wagon wheels, they line up to the modern train track. It's literally the same width, which lines up to rocket technology, because rockets had to be able to be built and put onto a train to be able to transport them. It all goes back to a beginning point.
Oh, weird.
Yeah.
Got it.
So from our most advanced stuff of rockets to our beginning of transportation.
Yeah.
Two horses' asses.
Yeah, I mean, so that interesting, because I would say the two horses' asses in auto would probably end up being website, right? Because I think about, maybe not.
Yeah, before that, go to just how we would sell cars and that process, right? And everything has been bolted onto the process instead of reinventing the process. Nobody stopped.
Well, this is I think where, this is what I'm saying. I don't know if I was, when I said internet, I'm not sure if I think that
it's deeper.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but it goes to think, as we do this, like, this is why it's hard, like, to just reinvent the wheel. They couldn't say, well, look, we could make trains twice as wide, right? They could carry twice as much freight. They could do all this.
Yeah.
So things link together. It's easy to look backwards, right? But
totally.
So the interesting thing, so questions then out of this, right? So I'm a huge believer in processes. I feel dealerships aren't real as the best dealerships have pretty good processes in place.
Yeah.
But a lot of stores are really driven by personalities and managers who can control X, right? I can get my hands around this. I'm a really good manager, so I can control that. But in the age of digital retailing, I felt like this was throwing gas on an already open flame by throwing us in COVID, right? Because you can run and get all the technology you want. Doesn't mean you're going to sell any more cars.
Totally.
Then I started to think of the weird things that are going to happen. As you said, remote salespeople. How do I manage them? There's no auto-specific tech to manage my people. How do I move the cars all over the place? Think about the loss of time of taking a car to a customer, bringing it back, gas, new increased liability of vehicles now on the road.
Yeah.
Insurance policy changes, because that changes, because before, salespeople were really in the dealership. They're on a prescribed test drive route per se. Now I'm driving 30 minutes to someone's house to take them a car.
Yeah. When I was talking to Progressive Insurance, I don't know, 2 months ago, and conceptually it made a lot of sense to have, there's a few digital retailing products on the market that essentially have access to GPS on either a mobile device or to, at Prodigy, we had an iPad that the salesperson actually brought with them.
Right.
And, the whole pitch to Progressive was, you're already doing safe buyer or safe driver programs at a consumer level. This would be a safe driver program at a dealer level. So whether it's a service technician or it would be the at-home test drive.
Yeah.
Right. We could track them. We can monitor them. Hey, they never went over 55 miles an hour. They only drove for 15 minutes. So you could adjust underwriting costs based around that. Those like kind of having an ecosystem of safe buyers. I think that's a huge, I think digital retail is actually like website is, I guess, like horse versus train. So like, similar tracks, but there's going to be a giant vertical created just off of it.
Yeah.
And I think there's going to be a lot of support products that plug into it. It feels a lot like website did 2008 to 2012.
Yeah, I think like I started thinking like it's remote employee management, logistics software, like being able to just manage, okay, where are my cars? Like, where are my people? What are they doing? Like, I think we both agree, a lot of that can be tracked through an iPhone. I mean, gosh, I can get down to less than 3 meters of where you're at right this second and where you live, where you work, because your phone rests at those locations. And then
totally
the accelerometer can kick in and go up. He's going over 25 miles an hour for 2 minutes. So he's either the fastest freaking bike rider on the planet,
Usain Bolt,
electric skateboard, or he's most likely in a car.
I think I always ask dealers, like, because I think there's a lot of friction in trying to adjust the measurement, because the immediate criteria for a new product in terms of software for a dealer has usually been, what's the ROI on it?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I'm listening. It's too long. What's the ROI?
Right.
And you're like, so I'm always, like, well, what's the ROI on your phone? That's always my response back.
That's a good one.
Because we know if we took the phone out of the dealership, sales would go down, right? We know that if you have a better process than your neighbor, right, your competitor on the phone, that your sales will do better, right? Yeah. And we also know that like there's a billion different phone companies out there call tracking, so on and so forth, that you can use that feel a little bit interchangeable, but you maybe don't change because it's like a pain in the butt to go into your CRM and like redo everything. So like once there's like settled software, it kind of feels very similar to a lot of other things like CRM, like digital retailing eventually will, like website. And so to me, it's like, but no one asks that question, right? No one says like, what's the ROI on like my actual phone system, because we recognize it doesn't meet that criteria. And this is why I keep on going back to like, let's change the value criteria. Like we no longer need to like, I don't even think we should care about leads, period. I think that's over. I don't even know why we keep on trying to battle up a hill that just grows more and more and more. It's like the consumer has spoken out loud and said, I'm not going to do this first name, last name, email address thing. Like it's just, it's not happening.
Right.
And we're still like beating this drum, and it's crazy to me, So it's like, I think if we also change the way we measure, right? So if we change what atomic unit we pay attention to,
right,
build our businesses off of, and we no longer make it out of leads, and we say, how about data instead? Or how about retention or whatever, any other type of metric. Now all of a sudden you're actually solving that consumer need, because they'll feel it eventually. That trickles down to them.
Right.
Where you're like no longer calling every 5 minutes to try to get the lead or the appointment.
Ben, when do you want to come in to test drive this brand new 2019, 84 months, no money out of pocket, 0% interest?
Deferred for 90 days, 180 days. What do you need?
4 months, man. What else do you need?
I know. It's like, no. I think you start with the measurement first, that unit, that bleeds out to everything else.
Right.
Everything else then changes.
Yeah, so look, that's a good point. So like Carl Stoll back in the day, his philosophy was customer for life. You remember that whole
Yep.
run. And I remember going to that Cadillac store and seeing and experiencing it. And it was very much more like a McDonald's in the sense of like super clean, very organized, very system driven. And that it was all customer relationship, right? It's experience. And
Totally.
you know, it's that's the one thing that it's funny. It hangs on my head all the time. The word experience, because that's what like people want to pay for now. Like the millennial generation,
Totally.
everyone's like, I want to pay for the experience, right? That's why
Yep.
electric shows or whatever. I don't know what that e-music stuff goes on.
EDM.
Yeah, I'm just too old now, man. So
I'll take you. We'll
yeah,
go.
I know. Great. Just what I need. I'll just show up. They're like, hey, Ben, you brought your dad? That's like, cool. So interesting though, of that, it's experience, right? So
Yeah.
how do you, like, that would be my thought as a dealer right now. It's like, how do you create the best experience, right? It's, yeah, you're going to sell cars, but how are you going to differentiate yourself through
Yeah.
experience, right?
I think, man, there's so much to unpack there. I think there's like, in terms of, well, let me tell like my favorite story of experience. And I'm looking forward to going back there once this world gets a little bit more normal and I can go back to a restaurant. There is there's a steakhouse in Chicago called Maple and Ash. And like, I don't know, I want to say like 5 months ago, 6 months ago, one of my clients was like, and this is like 9 o'clock at night. I'd worked from 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock. And he's like, let's go to a steakhouse. And I'm like,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know. I travel a lot in my normal life. And I think I've ate at every single Ruth Chris and like Gibson's that you could. So like steakhouse just to me is like,
Yeah.
I would rather do Shake Shack, you know?
Right.
And so he's like, no, it's great. You're going to love it. I was like, all right, fine, love it. So we go to this place called Maple and Ash and we walk upstairs and it's got this like nightclub atmosphere. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like, that's like interesting, you know, it's a little different. And then we go sit down and I have been trying for years to get a drink named after me. So it's called the Hadley.
Okay.
It's Aperol, Maletti, Smith and Cross rum. Third on the rocks.
Okay.
It's like a Negroni went to Jamaica and got a tan. It's delicious. It's really good. And so
I got the description for it, man. It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we sit down and I open up the menu and I'm looking through all the items or whatever. And like in the biggest, boldest letters, there's an item called I don't give a fuck. And I'm like, what? Like, this is amazing. Like,
yeah.
Like these guys get me. Like what?
Right.
So I call over our waitress and she's like, I'm like, what is this? And she's like, oh, essentially what the chef is going to do is they're going to send you a bunch of 13 to 15 off menu items. And they're just going to guess what you like. So they'll give you something and you say, that was awful. And then they'll learn and they'll give you something else and so on and so forth. And it's the easy button. It's the you've been working for 13 hours a day button in Chicago and you're away from your wife and you just want to like not think and you just want someone else to do the thinking for you, but it's the best. It's also, I think one day like when my wife is like, I don't know what I want. I'm like, cool.
I know where I'm taking you.
Yeah, I exactly know where I'm going to take you.
We're getting on an airplane right now to go eat.
We're going to Chicago. And so I'm like amazed. I'm like, this is like, that's like a great example of turning experience into brand and turning experience into something very tangible.
Yeah.
Right. Where like actually the lack of experience, in other words, like going experience negative, I didn't have to think, I didn't have to do, is actually like creating value to me. Then it gets better because I ordered a Hadley. Right.
Yeah.
And the waitress goes, cool, what's that? I give her the story and she's great. Goes to the bartender, comes back, gives me one. Like 5 minutes later, it's gone.
Right.
So another waitress is walking by and I flag her down and I'm like, excuse me. And I like lift up my glass. It's empty. And she's like, yes, sir. And I was like, oh, could I get, and she looks and she goes, oh, maple and ash whiskey sour. Like she called it, you know? And I go, oh, no, it's not, because I guess that was like their drink.
Yeah.
And I go, no, no, no. And she goes, before I could finish my sentence, she goes, oh, no, sorry, Mr. Hadley, it's the Hadley. You want another Hadley? And I go, wait a second, what the hell just happened? I'd never talked to this woman before, ever, right?
Right.
Ever before. And she knew what a Hadley was. So I go, Miss, please explain, like, what's going on here? And she like, what do you mean? And I go, how did you know what drink this is? I actually invented that drink in Chicago 2 years prior. So I was like, is it spreading? Like, are people, do people know it?
Happening?
Yeah, is it happening?
Is it
and
happening?
She goes, oh, well, your other server, you know, after she learned what your preference was, she went back to the bartenders. She told all the bartenders what your preference was, who you were. And then she went to all the other servers in your section, and she told them what your preference was. So you could stop literally any of us. There's like 4 servers, or you could go up to the bar and circumnavigate either of us, and everybody would know what a Hadley is. And I'm thinking in my head, like, oh my God, you're a steak restaurant. Right. Your steak isn't even that great, but that is insane, right? Steak is almost a commodity, but you walk, so like compare that to a dealership, right? Yeah. I walk in, some guy normally, right, in real life, in like physical life, I walk in, I have a meet and greet with someone, right? Hey, what's your first name? What's your last name? Ben Hadley. Oh, great. We're going to introduce you to some guy. Yeah. I go, well, I actually had an appointment, right? I filled in test drive online. Oh, yeah. Yeah, Joe was supposed to meet me. Oh, shoot, Joe's on lunch. But let me still introduce you to Steve. Okay, sure. Hi, Steve. Hey, what's your name? I'm Ben Hadley. Oh, awesome. Great to meet you. We go do a bunch of stuff. We build rapport. Feels great. Whatever. I buy a car. And then he goes, hold on a second. Let me introduce you to the F&I guy. He wants to say something. Cool. F&I guy comes in. Hey, what's your name? Yeah. First name, last name. Ben Hadley again. That's after I probably did first name, last name like 6 times online, right? Yeah. And so like, it's not even that hard. Like the problems we have are problems we created in the process. And I almost think like the first thing I would do at a dealership today is download like Slack or WhatsApp or create a Facebook group or some sort of mutual chat service, because all that was really happening at Maple and Ash is that they were saying, here's a customer, here's their preferences. Everybody needs to be aligned to the preference, right? Right,
and they're aligned to the customer to deliver the experience.
Exactly. Yeah. And that to me is like one of the biggest worries in the digital retail world is like, we weren't even doing it really great in physical world.
No, I listen.
So like now you disconnect people and I'm like, oh man, this could be.
I would see it all the time. Like here as a lead comes in digital retailing, customer abandons process. Now it comes in a traditional lead in a CRM. I call you up and let's say you've already gone through, I selected the vehicle, I nailed down payment. Let's say you even did the trade. Yeah. And I call you and say, hey, when do you want to come in for your appointment? I don't even acknowledge what you did, or I just show up and I've already done some of the work online. You have to restart it in most cases, unless your dealership totally embrace digital retailing holistically throughout the entire organization. That we're going to pick up where you left off. Like Todd Caputo, they like walk you over to a giant kiosk touchscreen and they'll just pull up your account and say, oh, here you are, Ben, and here you got this, let's finish it out. And you literally finish the experience.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great example of what I mean, go wide. Yeah. Like to me, he's nailed it. He's done a great job of saying like, this isn't a SWAT team. This isn't like specific people. No, this is just the way we do business in the modern era. Right. And, you know, it's not like in a SaaS company, or startup that you have like some people on the sales team only use Zoom and other people only use like a phone or something, you know what I mean? It's like, it'd be crazy to like set up a business as siloed as we had set it up.
Yes.
And to a dealer, you're like, actually, look, software services, they go out, they try to get monthly recurring revenue. What are you doing? You're going out, not getting the recurring revenue, but the customer feels that monthly payment, right? As a recurrence. And so like the motions feel very similar, right? Like the motion feels like, yeah, whether I'm selling, a giant truck or I'm selling, a $3,000 a month CRM or whatever it is, that's going to be a very similar experience. And it's telling to me that a lot of digital retailing platforms haven't actually put buy it now buttons on their own websites.
Right.
So, like there's a part of me that thinks, okay, we should, if we're really in the mode of like transformation, then like we should be eating our own dog food,
Always. Right.
And it seems wild that you could like pitch someone and say, guess what? Everybody's going to buy stuff online. But if you want to buy our software, you got to leave a lead.
Yeah.
That's actually highlights how much process is still a part of this, because a lot of those websites you'll go to, the digital retailing sites you'll go to, and I'm talking about that actual company's website.
Yep.
You'll submit a lead and then they have killer processes behind it. That's where I say, guess what? You don't need digital retailing to have a killer process,
No.
Like
digital retailing should
do that first.
Supports. So it's like the people first, processes, and then tech. It should be like a layering. It's like wearing your spacesuit, right? You first need a super smart astronaut, right? And then, then you put them in a spacesuit, and then, you put them in a rocket, right? So
yeah, but like, this is what's crazy. Sorry, because I'll rant forever if nobody stops me. But like, I mean, McDonald's is run pretty well, right?
Yeah, with $8 an hour people.
Yeah, what the hell?
Process. Oh, I'll give you a McDonald's story.
Why can't we do that? Like, our guys are making way more money, and like, you're kind of like, we should hold a higher expectation to process than McDonald's does, right?
Yes. But McDonald's figured out a long time ago that the money was actually in the process, not necessarily the products. They were going to make it at consistent deliverability to keep bringing you back, right? For one.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that McDonald's is probably one of a great example of the most systematically organized organizations where you fit the process piece, not your personality, and then is naturally processes are built around you.
Yeah.
And that our business is just, if our business is going to be consistent and scalable, it has to do the work of consistent and scalable businesses, right?
Yeah. I think of my favorite is like, in terms of people realizing you're actually buying a process, you're not buying a product, is Amazon, because they actually end up selling us the process.
Yes.
Right? Like you go, oh, okay. They're gonna start with books, and they're only selling stuff that they have, right?
Yeah.
Only stuff in their warehouse. That's how it starts.
He chose books because you could drop ship them. That's why books. It had the highest SKUs, and he could easily ship them very fast
Anywhere.
out of already a very well-developed distribution network. So.
Totally. So then you're like, cool. But what does he learn? What does he master out of that? Operations and logistics, right? Yeah. Supply chain management. And so then he goes, man, I've really figured out this supply chain management thing. I should just sell that to everybody else. And then he creates Amazon Marketplace and says, by the way, look how awesome I've figured out this process. Now you guys can depend on me, right? You can build your ecosystems around my giant ass planet. And like, because I've created my, I'll say, atomic units out of operations and logistics and efficiency, the amount of mass I've created out of a business has created so much gravity that I've pulled in other businesses to be dependent on me. And now they're orbiting around.
Yeah.
And then he's like, now there's Amazon Marketplace, great. And then he goes and says, you know what? We really need like servers to power some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe we should just make a thing called Amazon Web Services. Yeah, okay. And we'll do that internal first.
Yeah.
And then like a year, 2 years later, he's like, wow, we've just mastered cloud services.
Yeah.
You know what we should do is fucking sell it to everybody else.
Yeah.
You know? And you're like, what? And then my favorite example is the recent one because it was the fastest one, which was Amazon Go stores where you just walk in.
Yeah.
Perceivably, I think, and I don't know, but it looks very similar. I think the question they asked was like, look, we've figured out how to make warehouses hyper efficient to where very quickly a warehouse worker can grab objects, right? And all of these things in the ceiling are tracking where they're grabbing objects, where they're placing objects, all of that. So what if we didn't even have the warehouse worker and it was just replaced by a shopper, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, let's just use the same technology we've mastered. And then we'll watch for the new consumer process that might emerge. And then they see it, they master it. And now they're relabeling it and selling it to Target, selling it to everybody else. And they're just selling a process. And it's like, man, I think back to like, hey, you know, you can't depend on someone giving you a blueprint. You kind of have to like make your own blueprint, but there's great resources to figure this out. I think the dealer of the winners in 5 years are going to be these guys that were like, I'm not waiting. I'm developing this blueprint right now. I know 50% of it's wrong. I'm going to iterate all that 50% over and over and over again. But I'm shaping the process versus like waiting for someone to drop a process on.
By just marketplace reaction. So
yeah, exactly.
So okay, this is fun. So who's your favorite process? But do you have a favorite book in process or?
Ooh, it'll be like a curveball. It'd be Principles Ray Dalio. Only because, you know, it's like, you know, in the again, 280 tweet characters, it would be like define your decision-making criteria and then your decisions become clear.
Yep. Did you ever read E-Myth by Michael Gerber?
Mm-mm.
And it's called The System is the Solution. It's all about repetitive outcomes, right? So it's about doing a process that you can get consistent results, right? That's McDonald's. Like, look, no matter where you go in the world, the hamburger virtually tastes the same. You know, the fries taste the same, right? It's the same. Now, obviously, other countries have nuances to menus that are localized. They were able to do that even at scale, but very consistent. So you have to look at like a dealership today. What is truly your competitive advantage? If it can't be price, because that's a really tough, and that's a ebb and flowing part of this business.
And it's particularly right now, it's just not a good time to make it price.
The prices of used cars are now,
exactly.
Right? I got I'm like, man, there's no marketplace. You have a backup of trades or of lease turn-ins. You have a backup of fleet. When the auctions really kick back in, what's going to happen? Are they going to drop 20%, 30%? I mean,
I don't know.
And then our dealer is going to have to sell their way entrepreneurially out of this, you know, Titanic of water of, you know, used cars. So that'll be interesting. But I think resonating back, it's process. Like, you have to be great at one thing. Like, I don't remember, it was a while ago. I always said, like, we compare not apples to apples anymore. Like, people aren't comparing them buying or servicing a car with just that experience. They're comparing buying a car with them walking into Apple to buy a phone or get it serviced and the experience they received, right? Because that's how our brains work. There's nothing, our brains work and link things together. And I always said, I had called, I think it was, I forget what it was years ago. I had called and I got put on hold, and, you know, I'm on hold and it's taken forever, right? And I'm like, damn, man. And I go through this like really lengthy experience, and I was like, huh. So, and I remember I had bought a pair of pants at down here. I think it was like Belk Lindsay or something. I don't remember, a store. And when I got home, I realized there was 2 pairs and I picked up the wrong ones. I picked up the ones too big. And I was literally going to the airport, and I called Belk Lindsay and they put me to the department. And the lady's like, "Oh yeah, I remember you." She goes, "I'll just walk the pants outside." And literally I drove up in my car. She just handed them and handed them.
Yeah.
And she goes, "I'll take care of the rest. Don't worry about it." And I was
amazing.
gone. And then I go, it's experience, right? And then I linked that experience to another experience that had nothing to do with buying freaking pants. I know what it was? It was calling at the time Sprint, which who I had my phone service with. And I was told like it was indefinite.
Well,
Like,
so like it's weird to me, you know, there's like the ebb and flow too of how valuable experience is. Like right now it's super valuable, right? When it becomes, but like website was super valuable in the beginning.
Yep.
And then it's kind of like just bare minimum. Like you have to have this.
Yeah.
And so eventually like that curve happens. But I think what's so interesting with this moment is that like there's nuances. Since my hypothesis is there's going to be more, there's going to be a lot of mass gravity to digital retailing. And then there's going to be more plugins and kind of ecosystems that exist around it, just like there was with website. So like we started with website, and then it was like, oh, chat, paid search, SEO company, agency, blah, blah, blah.
Creating all these moons around the planet.
Exactly. I think digital retailing is going to become another one of those. And I think that when that happens, you know, like talking about telephones, it's kind of like, the pattern I see is the moment I had a telephone experience and they said, "Hey, do you want to hold your spot in line and we'll just call you when we get a chance?" The moment I had that was the moment I hated every person that didn't have that experience. You know what I mean?
Well, that's it. This is how our brains
like
work.
The benchmark.
Right. Dealers you don't need to be comparing yourself to your competitive dealer. That is short-sighted. You need to be comparing yourself to every human that your customers, or every business your customers are touching, which is everything. So you have to be as competitive as the simplest of Apple. You have to make online scheduling one touch button simple, not, you know, I don't know my VIN. What is a VIN? Where do I find the VIN? Because even if we look at our websites, we talk in automotive terminology that the average person has no idea what that means.
Totally. I think like the reason to be scared from Uber, like people always like use the Uber, people are like, whatever, Uber, if someone wanted to replace a car with Uber, it'd be so expensive, it'd be like $1,400 a month. Like, why would they ever do that? And then you're like, yeah, but it's a click of a button.
Yeah.
And I get like maybe in traffic an hour of my day back and forth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like,
and if you're a lawyer, you could bill for that hour.
Totally. And if you're just me, I can work on my laptop on something in that hour in that traffic. So it's like I think there's, you know, again, that comes back to the wrong metric unit of success where you're like, well, money, right? It costs more money. And you're like, no. Guess what? Experience is better. Time is saved.
Yeah.
There's always those two equations. Either you're saving time or you're saving money. And it's okay to like spend more money if you're saving way more time, you know?
Yeah, because it's dollar cost, it's money. Look, we trade time for money, right? And the smartest businesses
winning both.
Yeah, like entrepreneurs really learn how to 10x that, right? They they get out of their personal time unit and it becomes a 10x multiplier, right?
Totally.
And that's what entrepreneurship to me has always been about. But yeah, I agree with you 100%. Like, I think dealers right now, this is that pause opportunity to say, hey, let's rethink our processes and, you know, let's do more with less and be more efficient and actually document our processes of how we do things, not how we say we do things. Because I always find, and I don't know if you had that experience, I walk into a dealership and they're like, oh, no, we got that. And this is how we do it.
Yeah.
And then I'll walk in there and not tell anyone. And I don't get that experience. And not get the experience because it gets the manager or owner is being told one thing, but something else is being delivered down here. And it shows in the results. So
Yeah, totally. I mean, there's like, you know, hey, we need more leads. It's like, cool. Like there's sometimes enough fear in the dealership, like micro ecosystem, that like they're like, oh, I'll make leads happen, and then like miraculously like a bunch of junk leads just appear on the desk, and everybody breathes a sigh of relief, right?
Wrong metric.
Or wrong metric, exactly. So like again, it's like I love the idea of saying like we need more um, web conference meet and greets. Okay, that
Okay.
seems reasonable. We need more TOs to the general manager through chat. Okay, like
Okay.
that's it. Like that's to me like is the right way of thinking it. But to be like, we need more leads. It's like, no, like get me more engagement, get me more, like get me something that's tangible, not you know, because I think again that's an empty calorie at this point.
Yeah, I agree. Man, this has been really good today. I've had a lot of fun with you. I'm so glad
Good, man.
I get to spend some time with you. I feel like we could sit on for like hours and just go at this.
Yeah, well, we could have gone into a lot of rabbit holes. I think this is probably the most focused our conversations have ever been, and it's
It
still
I know. I think we navigated a few things today, and it's cool.
yeah,
I think we have to come back. I think there's some more stuff I think we could share and do this again. So,
absolutely, man,
uh,
definitely.
yeah, man. Well, I again super appreciate you taking the time today, and it's awesome, man. Sit and talk to you,
Definitely.
listen to your brain work, man. So you got some really insightful thoughts there, and it's
Thank you.
cool. Loved
I
it.
appreciate it. I appreciate getting on here.
Absolutely. All right, hold on a second.